Hey everyone. In this interview today, I'm talking with Michiel and Pieter Jan from WeWantMore, an amazing brand and spatial design agency in Belgium. We talk about a case study for Neuhaus, a Belgian brand. It's a case study that won an Effie award, which is basically awards that reward the most effective campaigns in branding and marketing stuff. So it's not just about the most creative idea or execution. It's really about the results for the business, the ROI of branding. And this is one of those unique cases where they actually can talk about how their work, their packaging, their identity work, their brand strategy work, their branding work has affected the real results on sales value, on brand metrics, and a lot more. So we take a real deep dive into how this whole project came to be, the challenges, the strategy, the execution, the creative concept, how the impact on the numbers was, and a lot more. So it's a really interesting case study. So I do hope you enjoy. But first, let's just watch this little epic trailer they put together where they explain us the case study. I hope you enjoy and see you next time. Hey everyone. Today we're talking with Michiel and Janpieter from WeWantMore, a studio based in Antwerp. But maybe you guys could introduce yourself real quickly so the people can get to know you. Maybe Michiel, you first.
Hi, so I'm Michiel. I'm the creative director for the branding team at WeWantMore. We have two teams. We have a branding team and an interior team. So I am the creative director for the brand part.
And I'm Janpieter. I am business director of brand design at WeWantMore. So this means I'm more involved in the commercial aspect of everything going around at the studio, from client service management to business development.
Interesting. That's like a function that isn't talked about as much as probably the creative part. I mean, when it comes to branding, right? So I'm happy to have you both, like both sides of the spectrum, because I think that will be an interesting conversation today. Maybe tell us just a little bit about the studio WeWantMore, because I can tell you guys, like, I'm a huge fan. Like I've been drooling over the website, over the work you've been doing for the last years. So I mean, I absolutely admire it, but maybe walk us through a little bit. What's the studio about? What do you do? What kind of clients? All that stuff. Just whatever you want to share.
Okay, well, thank you first. We are, as you said, a studio based in Antwerp. We are about 35 people at the moment, I'd say, split up in two teams. As I just said, we have a branding team and an interior design team. Both teams work together quite a lot, as you can see in a lot of our projects. We also do separate projects over the divisions. So it actually allows us to deliver brands from conception up to an actual spatial solution. So we deal with quite a broad spectrum of brand related projects. Let's just call it that.
Cool. Anything you want to add to that, Janpieter?
As Michiel said, we're a design studio. So this means that we differentiate ourselves a little bit from, or maybe more than a little bit, from advertising agencies and communication or marketing agencies in the market. Design really is our core expertise. So we truly believe that that design is crucial in the development of a brand. And it's something that also deserves to be looked at from a specific expertise level. This doesn't mean that we don't look at the strategy for a brand, or that we don't do anything around the implementation or the activation of a brand, but the core focus always is design.
I think, and that all starts from like a base point, and maybe if you could talk a little bit about that part, and I think then it's time to dive into the actual case. But I'm interested in the work that's done before you dive into the different like realms of creativity. How do you at WeWantMore approach, well, we can call it brand strategy or briefing or whatever you want to call it, but how do you approach that first part?
Well, we also call it brand strategy or concept, or I mean, there's still a lot of internal discussion about how to call it. But in essence, we do our research first, as in, because you need to know, to create something for a certain target audience or group of people to walk away with a certain feeling or a certain memory or to evoke something. You need to get closer to those people. So you need to kind of know what they are interested in, what the surrounding market or their world looks like, and what makes them tick, what are their interests. So there is research partially really on a strategic level, as in a strategic director that actually makes PowerPoints with research data and puts it into charts and graphs and all that kind of stuff, versus our creative team that goes more about it from a conceptual level. But I mean, those people are also partially immersed in the stuff that the strategy director delivers, and other parts are just by doing your own desktop research and talking to a few people and looking on the internet or reading a book or whatever, just to find a starting point. And from that point on, we really I really hate to use the word because it's a very big buzzword, but at a certain point the story needs to emerge, as in there needs to be, as I said, we first define what kind of reaction would we like to have, and then how do we get there. And that part is where the conceptual part really sits, where we look at how can we translate that feeling, and what can we which buttons can we push, so to speak, to get people to that point. And that's way before we really start designing. Designing is a really big part of the process, and it takes quite a lot of time, but that's really the point where we are still immersed in what's the story, what's the brand values, what do we look like, what do we talk like, are we a persona, yes or no? Is there a brand persona? Sometimes there is, sometimes there isn't. Is there a persona for the target audience? Sometimes there is, sometimes there isn't. But it's really, we do spend quite a lot of time in the first 1.5 phase, so to speak.
I love that. And I think what you mentioned about like evoking something and starting from that and then filling in how you're going to get that, I think that's a great approach. I think sometimes maybe people start thinking a lot about the concept, but they didn't have that starting point. And I think that's a great way of thinking about it and evoking, because you mentioned story and like we hear storytelling a lot. I think sometimes storytelling gets interpreted in a way that we have to tell like this very long story, but what you said about evoking, that's very direct. That's like you see one touch point for 1 second and it needs to do something. And for me, that's even more powerful than storytelling, unless you want to say that's the same thing, of course. But and I think that's a good segue into this first case, like, because we Anke from your team contacted me, and she mentioned specifically the work done for Neuhaus. Do I pronounce it right?
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Correct.
So a well-known brand, of course, I think especially in Belgium. But I saw the work and I was, of course, very much impressed. I'm a real packaging fan myself, so of course, in that case, was already won over. But Anke mentioned that this case had won an Effie award, and this is also why I wanted to bring you guys on to talk about this case specifically, because I think it's a very interesting example of how his branding is executed, but also how it impacts a business. Maybe let's just start with walking us through the challenge. Like, why did this client come to you? What was like the starting point of all this whole story?
Well, the starting point was Yeah, Neuhaus is a really well-known brand. Everyone knows Neuhaus. It has a high spontaneous awareness, but the new management and new marketing director, they saw that the brand was becoming less and less relevant, and they had a lot of problems in reaching a broader and younger audience. They were losing clientele, and their current client base was getting older and older. So this had a huge impact on sales results and the attractiveness of the overall brand. So the new management was very, very focused on turning this around because it impacted the financial results of the company. And they could have opted for just yet another advertising campaign or some new sales channels or opening new retail stores. But they wanted to really go to the core of the problem and reevaluate what the brand is all about. And to assess the brand and see how they could make it relevant again within this highly competitive field of gifting that they are playing in. So they are not only competing against other chocolate brands, but on an international level, they are competing against all gifts in the market. So against spirits and flowers and perfume and etc. So they really wanted to start with a new story and a new idea, but always, of course, from the heritage and the DNA of the brand. And that's where we came into picture.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing, right? It's a brand with such a big heritage, which makes it, I think, very fun to work on, but also very risky and probably like a little bit scary as well, because you don't want to throw away the whole thing, the thing people know it for. So like, what were your first feelings, like Michiel, when you knew you were going to work with this brand? Like, how did you even think about it just at the start of the project?
What the good thing is about Neuhaus, that it's going to sound really as if we didn't do anything, but the good thing with this bigger heritage is that the story kind of tells itself. As in, you just need to look for the right cues and really dive into it. But the origin story of Neuhaus, if you dust it off and whip it into shape, is actually a perfect starting point to do the brand. So I don't think we were very afraid of touching it, because we didn't really, we didn't disturb that much. The way I always compare this to, it was kind of like a dull diamond or something which has been on a shelf for a very long time. But you really need to look at it, dust it properly, see what's there, what's really good, and bring that back to the foreground. Because they have a story that any chocolate brand in the world can dream of. They actually invented their own category. They invented the praline. So there was no praline before Neuhaus invented it. The original Jean Neuhaus, the original was a pharmacist who invented the praline because he basically dipped bitter medicine in chocolate so that people would actually take their medicines. Then his son replaced the medicine with actual ganache and those kind of things, and then you got an actual praline, which means that if we're into gifting and into caring and that kind of stuff, it's really in the center of the brand, and it's always been there. As in, the original thought of inventing their category is basically what we're using at this point to get the brand. It's the brand compass, or whatever you want to call it. As in, we work on a theme which is called the gift of caring, which is basically their entire 180-year story compressed into one sentence, and serves as a starting point for everything. And then, yes, of course, we are a luxury brand, so we can't go really out there in, I don't know, fluorescent colors and weird design, but that's okay, because that also tells its own story. And now it sounds like we didn't do anything. We did a lot of work, but it's really about finding the nuances and digging and talking and working on that kind of thing. And that's something we really love, I can say. So that's awesome.
What I have seen that is really fascinating to me is that you really captured like that feeling of that brand existing for a long time, and yet it looks very fresh. But I do wonder, like at the starting point, I can imagine there's this rich history of that brand, but how do you know what to pick out of it and like dust off? Because I can imagine there was a lot of like paths you could have run with. Like, where did you get the sense that this was the perfect way to keep working on that?
Maybe to yeah. Michiel made it sound very that it came very natural,
easy,
also the story. Easy, very easy, and for a part it also really did. But the important thing and the important decision that was made is that we changed perspective on the brand from a brand standpoint. So instead of talking about being the inventor of the praline and telling people what we are doing, we turned it around and we flipped it to an emotional territory and focused really on why are we doing this. And that is where we came up with the brand essence, the gift of caring. So we make pralines and we make chocolate as Neuhaus because we genuinely care. We want people to be able to express their care for someone else by gifting Neuhaus. And then you get a whole different kind of perspective and a different lens into looking at your product, at your brand, and of course at your packaging. Because if it's about gifting and expressing a feeling of care to someone you love, and the way to do this is with the Neuhaus box of pralines, the brand identity and the packaging design is going to be crucial in bringing this message across without having to say it explicitly. So if you take this lens and you look at the heritage of the brand and how the brand existed already, you start to see different things and you bring different things to the foreground than what you would have done when you wanted to exclusively focus on being premium or being crafty or being something else. And I think this really reflects very good in the work that Michiel and the team have done in bringing this like understated feel of luxury and care within the identity.
Which is really in details and details, and even more details. We're more of the quality materials, and the packaging and the entire brand basically has to show people that we at Neuhaus think about every detail, so it becomes the perfect gift you can give to someone. Without that, we're going to have to say, hey, look, this is the perfect gift to give to someone. You're going to have to feel it, and the gifter needs to feel it as well, as much as the person who's going to get the gift, actually, because they're the person buying the gift. So it's
so although it's our ambition as a brand to be the perfect gift for someone, we will never ever say it in communication.
Yeah, that's like a difference to, let's say, I don't know, maybe it's like merci or other things where it's more on the nose, like you need to give this because it's a gifting chocolate, and this is more like where what you mentioned before, that the feeling you want to evoke is very clear, but it's like translated into design and almost features and feelings and not into words. There's probably like the brand essence underneath that is actually that thing put to words, but the way it's expressed in the final touch points is very much like an implicit way. And I think that is very, very interesting to me as well. Like when you started out, let's say you had the brand strategy part, you knew that was the essence, like creatively, what maybe were some challenges, and like how did you approach just starting out this project, bringing it to life visually and textually?
I think in the very first, as I said, that's the part where I wasn't really there. The first things I saw, there was a lot of which I think is a route you can walk, but then also it kind of turns into a problem, is there was quite a lot of references to the actual pharmacy part. As in, because the caring started there, but then in the end of yes, it comes with a rich heritage, and you have lots of things that are handwritten and that kind of stuff, especially in old pharmacies, and labels and that kind of thing. But it kind of gets in the way of the actual of the simple core, and that's what we still try to do on Neuhaus. Try to keep things simple. That sounds really simple again, but trying to see if you can get rid of some of the clutter, because it's very easy to start talking, like a lot of heritage brands do, about we've been around for 167 years and we've been doing this and that, and it's on a history page. That's where it should be. That's all fine. But it shouldn't be on the front of your product, because in the end, that's not what I don't buy a chocolate because you've been making chocolate for over 100 years. I buy it because I hope that because you've been doing it for 100 years that it's really good, because I want something really good to give to someone. So that we try to keep things relatively simple, or not, and with simple I mean not cluttered, not as in it's not thought out or thought through, because it's very, I mean, everything is thought through, because it's also the thing that Janpieter just touched upon, this whole it's a gift makes everything we do an unboxing experience as well, because I mean, if I give it to someone else is going to unpack that gift. So that's why the bows are there, and if you open the box, there's text on the inside. There is a nice monogram print on the inside of the cushion pads. With a lot of brands, they're just white. So there is detail in everything, because it keeps on going from this, and someone thought about this and someone thought about that, and it evaluates the product, but it's always just one thing. We try to do just one singular thought and then just pull it through.
Yeah, and I think that's the same what you when you mentioned earlier, like that things came natural, and now you mentioned it's simple. I think what you really mean is like, because you had that,
we simplify it.
Yeah, but you have that North Star, you have that concept beneath everything that makes it logical for you to make these choices. But it's like, in execution wise, it's completely not simple. It looks very detailed and refined, and it looks like there's a lot of craftsmanship involved to create this sort of stuff. But I do understand when you say simple and natural, because all of those things were there, and once you made the choice. And what I think is really interesting as well is what you mentioned about the whole heritage. And I think that's becoming a bit of a problem today, where we see like a lot of people saying, yeah, you need the brand purpose and the heritage and the story. What I really like what you guys did here is you gave that feeling of heritage, but it's not like you slap it in the consumer's face all the time, like, hey, we're old, we're authentic. And you make it about the customer, about him giving a gift to him or her giving a gift to somebody else, and not really about this is this old brand and they have this very cool story. Like, that's in the back burner somewhere. I think that's very powerful when you have this heritage, to still choose for the customer and putting him in front of as like the main character. I think that's something I applaud.
Yeah, thank you. It's also we that's something we talked about quite a lot in the studio as well. I mean, we are a heritage brand in a contemporary setting, as in we sell products, or Neuhaus sells product in 2020 and 2021 and 2019. So I mean, we don't want to feel old and stale. We just want to feel maybe experienced, or as in you see that we know what we're doing and we come from somewhere, and in this case from Brussels, we've been doing for a very long time, but the product needs to compete with contemporary products, and we don't want to get stuck in some kind of old school looking retro heritage look, because I mean the way we define the visual brand is what we call modern classic. So it needs to be contemporary, but it also needs to have an element of classic, because we can never be the kind of chocolate brand that was founded 2 years ago and does all of these experimental things and is just, I don't know, enfant terrible kind of chocolate brand. We're not.
Tony Chacoloni.
Yeah, that's not what we are, and we're never going to be that. But we do exist for more than 1.5 centuries. So that's our heritage. So there's no need to hide it, but it's also not something to slap people in the face with all the time.
Yeah, and I like that you have those two words defined for the visual style. Is that something you came up with before actually doing the design, or is it something that just like got a name while you were developing the thing?
I think it got more of a name in the process. That's because it's really we'll probably touch on that later as well, but we're still very actively involved with Neuhaus at this point. So it's really the barometer, or the indicator of, is something okay? Because sometimes things are just too modern or they're too classic. And we really try to find a balance, and it's also finding a balance lots of the times, because it's not that it's always spot on. I mean, we have people who've been working on Neuhaus for a couple of years now, so we all know where it sits. But still, when you're designing, sometimes you can design something and then think, yeah, it looks really great, but it's not modern classic. It's not modern classic enough, or it's too modern, or yeah, this is a little bit too classic. So it's Fingerspitzengefühl.
No, but the fact that you have tension between those two things makes it work for me, and I think that's also a very good starting point. Like I can imagine for Neuhaus, like internally to keep working on this brand. If they have those two elements together, they know it needs to have some of that friction. I think that's a very powerful thing to have. If it would have been like luxury classic or something like that, it would be just that would be boring. And I think that friction in there makes it very interesting to look at. Like one more thing, because I do want to dive a little bit into the numbers as well. I think that will be interesting. But we see this work, and I think as designers of people or marketers or everybody that loves brands, like there's always like this case where we do wonder, like, how did you get this past the client is maybe a bad way of phrasing it, because they probably were very much involved in this. But like, how did you convince the client of doing this type of work? Like what made it work for the client? How did you do that to make sure they were on board? Because it's like, it's not because it's a visual revolution, but I think because it does take a lot of consequences for their whole brand and all the touch points. Like, how did you approach that part, like working together with the client?
So there are a lot of answers to this question, but there are two main elements that are very important, as we discussed them earlier. Of course, the proposition of the identity and the visual language didn't come in the first presentation. We had been working with the client for a long time on the strategy. We had defined a clear story and a clear definition of the brand. We knew what we wanted to express and what we wanted to reach as an end result. So they were already heavily involved in the process of the branding. From a visual design standpoint, it wasn't a revolution either. So although that the brand and the packaging mainly looks very different and very refreshed compared to what it was before, it still doesn't feel like a complete revolution. You still feel the core identity of the old Neuhaus within the new, but it's just reinterpreted in a modern way. So this helps also with the process of accepting and adopting the identity from a client standpoint. When you asked, how were you able to convince the client, because it's going to be very impactful within the organization? We were lucky that the client, of course, had the ambition himself to really rebrand completely. And they knew and they were willing to take on the huge challenge of rebranding the entire brand, redoing all the packaging, redoing all the boutiques, redoing all the communication materials in all retail outlets. So this, of course, made it for us easier to rethink and rebuild the brand from the ground up. But that is also one of the things that we also see that are hugely important in the success of rebranding, is that a client is willing to go all the way. That is he willing to go flat out and to take on the challenge also internally, because this is it's a bold decision for a marketing director and a management to do such thing, because it has a lot of impact also outside of the marketing department. It goes to logistics and supply chain and to all your suppliers of all the packaging involved, and to the boutiques and to the people that work in the boutiques and the sales reps, and you name it. Everyone is involved. Everyone is going to have an opinion, and not everyone will be happy and will be willing from the start on to go step on your train and believe in your story. But with the persistence the client had, and the belief also in the story that we were writing. That really helped in adopting the identity within the company, to the point where it became a huge energy shot for the company also. It truly woke not only the brand, but the entire company and all the people working there up. It sparked a new innovation pipeline. So it gave a huge energy boost also internally. And
that it really revitalized them almost.
Of
I think
course.
that's such a powerful thing we don't talk about as much as often. Like just that part alone, like giving them that feeling of being excited again about your brand is also something I think that's very, very important.
Yeah, of course. And the client being an internal ambassador is crucial. So you need to be able to have discussions with your client that go really into the core of the problem, or discuss designs, discuss strategy. But in the end, it's the client that also needs to be the ambassador of the rebranding project within the company and really defend it internally. And that's why a partnership between the client and the studio is so important.
Yeah, just sorry to interrupt you there. Were you working with like the CEO or the CMO on this? Were they the decision takers, or was it more like somebody else that was responsible?
No, there was involvement from senior level from the start on.
Because that's important too. I think if you mention like if it needs to be carried across the organization, they really need to support it from top to bottom, I guess.
Yeah, you really need an internal ambassador.
Yeah, that's cool.
It's not always the case that it is the CMO or the CEO, but you need someone that is really going to fight for what you're doing. Because sometimes you have to make a branding or a rebranding in a design process. You always make choices. And with the choice, there is also something you can do and something you can't do. So you need someone to defend these choices internally.
Cool. Yeah, Michiel, talk to us a little bit about the handoff part.
Yeah, because that didn't really happen. As in, now there is no real handoff part. We still work with Neuhaus a lot.
That's awesome.
It's also the thing is, since we are since Neuhaus is a very seasonal business, as in there's like big chocolate moments in the year, or big gifting moments, let's just call it that, which automatically becomes a big chocolate moment then as well. So you have your Valentine's and your Easter, and holidays are like the key moments in the gifting and chocolate calendar. So we as you can see here, we interpret every season, every year again through the lens of the gift of caring. So we try to focus on again, feelings, as in the holidays thing you just saw is about warmth and being together, and the shine of a candle in the middle of a table, which automatically turns into a group feeling. So we make this kind of pattern and glow that reflects light, and it has this gradient. So we basically do that every year, and with production schedule on packaging, we're always 1.5 years ahead. So we're at the moment we're done with a lot of the 2021 boxes and working on a lot of the 2022 boxes. So we are still very much in an ongoing relationship with Neuhaus, and it's turned into a team effort. And with a team effort, I mean client, agency, where a lot of the time you get this friction between client and agency with but the client never knows what they never know what they want, and they have really no idea. And the agency is always, in a lot of clients' vision, they're obnoxious and they know better and they try to push their own way. And I can say that with the Neuhaus team, we very much are a brand team on both sides of the agency client divide, let's just call it that. So we are still very much involved in the brand part. So yes, we do all of the packaging and stuff like that, because it's what you would expect. But we're also we look with them at what could be shapes for new pralines, taste cues based for different. If we're doing new collections and we're doing Easter, which is not Easter but it's spring basically. So if we're thinking about concepts there. It's also the kind of stuff they then take inside and go like, okay, maybe our maître chocolatier should look at this theme, and maybe we can get tastes that fit together. We do every once in a while. We've done well, R&D is a big word, but more of a brainstorms together with the client about what could be interesting as a product, maybe, or what could be a moment to put a product in, as in what do we see, what do you guys see, and how do we think we could create brand moments, so to speak, and how could we put a product on there, and how could we then spin that story around and make some packaging. So there was never really a drop-off point. I mean, they have in-house design as well, so they work on certain things, and that's all. I mean, yes, there is a style guide and a brand guide and a photography guide and all that kind of stuff. So the social media teams do their own work, which is on brand because they are within the same visual and verbal boundaries. But there's no clear drop-off points. We are still, I mean, we talk with Neuhaus a couple of times a week still, because we are in a non-stop seasonal process, and every new collection that gets launched basically passes through our agency as well, from a very early point, as in its briefings have become less defined over the last 2 years. We can call it that as well, because in the beginning it was very much okay, this and that and that and that and that, and we moved upstream together with the client to a point where it's really okay, we're thinking of launching this kind of collection, full stop. This is the tastes that are going to be in there. We're thinking it'll be a summer collection, whatever. Could you think about it? And then it's really naming, visual, what's the kind of story we're doing. So it's still a very alive relationship, and also a very alive brand, which is also interesting, because I understand your question of the drop-off point, because a lot of brand development has that, where you just let a brand go and then you just hope for the best.
Bye-bye.
Where in this case, where in this case we can really actively adjust the brand as well, as in the stuff we're doing at this point is not kilometers away from, but it's quite a bit away from the first wave of new brand stuff, because we keep adjusting to the times, as in 2020 was a very weird year for everyone, which also means that Neuhaus had to reinvent certain things on themselves, which puts a focus on other channels. Where you can adjust things, it's also we're getting a clearer picture of, I think, a little bit changed target audience, as in, because yes, they were old and aging, to be not disrespectful, but I mean that's what the original target audience was. We wanted to aim younger, but then when you start doing that, you get other people in, so you get a different target audience than we started out with. So we are adjusting things, and boxes or packaging looks a lot different from the collection. And it's all still the same brand, but it's adjusted to. Yeah,
it still starts from the same core idea.
Yeah.
And the big advantage that we have, and the client has with us, keep being and staying involved in the brand, is that probably they will never, or much later than was before, arrive at a point where they see there is a total disconnection with the audience, or the brand isn't relevant anymore, because we are constantly keeping our finger on the pulse, and we are constantly evolving the brand, but from the same idea, from the same strategy, and through the same lens. So there's never a disruption. It is always, it's in the minds and in the hearts of the consumer, it stays the same identity.
Yeah, you're kind of like, on the one hand, you're the brand guardians, but on the other hand, you're also brand innovators and keeping it alive. I think that's a really interesting relationship to have with your client. So kudos to that. I think that's really smart on both parties. Very interesting. Like, I think we could talk for hours more about just the design alone, because it's very interesting. I think just you mentioning this alone, but we do need to talk numbers, right? There's the fact that it won an Effie case. Maybe Janpieter, just like give us a little bit of what that is, the Effie case, like what does that mean, and then just briefly walk us through how did this work, this project influence the numbers for Neuhaus?
So to start, an Effie, and Effie is competition. It's an international known competition within marketing, which is an award that is given to the most effective initiatives, marketing initiatives of the year. So it's held every year, and compared to other award shows, this is really focused on results, so effectiveness. How did the initiative really impact the business results of the client? And there is less look at creative merits. And for us, as a design agency, as a design studio, we very consciously made a decision at the studio to subscribe for the Effie. Because we really believe that we had a strong case, which was proven by winning a bronze Effie, but that we had a strong case here to prove the impact and the effectiveness of a rebranding for Neuhaus. So this is one of the main reasons why we participated.
Interesting. And like, because if it is about effectiveness, like how, because I think that's one of like, I get the question a lot from people, like how can you prove the ROI of branding and stuff, because it's really upstream and sometimes it takes time to actually like have an impact on sales. It's not like you're doing a marketing campaign, but because you guys did do this branding project as an Effie award, I think that's very interesting. So walk us through the actual like effects and how that happened.
So the actual effects, we looked at two main things: sales value growth, which was our main KPI, and brand KPIs, of course, where the branding clearly impacted all main premium brand KPIs. So meaning that we scored a lot higher, like double-digit increase in brand image KPIs, like do you perceive it as a premium brand? Is the brand high class? Do I like the packaging, etc., etc.? But also we scored enormously on the brand being perceived as the ideal gift. So people really, there was a big difference before and after the rebranding in the perception of the consumer from Neuhaus being the ideal gift for someone. These brand KPIs formed the base for a successful story on sales value increase. So we saw a huge uplift in sell-out and sell-in values at Neuhaus, which made it easy for us to generate our ROI, because we could calculate what the impact was of the rebranding if it placed the investment of the rebranding next to the revenue that was generated. So here we could really state that there was a clear objective result of the rebranding, which was not just limited to a small period in time. It was really seen as a full year of rebranding being in the market.
Yeah, and I think probably because you have that relationship with Neuhaus, it was also possible to see that impact in the time you were working for them, because I think often like when you do a rebrand and you say bye-bye, it's very hard to then see what actually your part of the effort was and maybe the advertising campaign that came after or whatever. So I think that's very interesting where you guys stayed together with them. And like what I also found very fascinating is it's mentioned a bit in the video of the case where you say that the packaging almost became like the campaign. And I think it's even true on a communications level, on an actual marketing level, that the packaging really became the messaging. And I think that's a very interesting thing to do, because it's almost like a crossover between branding becoming part of like a communications campaign. I don't know if you talked about that approach as well.
Yeah, well, it's an active decision, as in there is no real big media budget, as in Neuhaus doesn't spend money on big ad campaigns, above the line stuff. They have a couple of owned channels, which we do use, as in there's a lot of social media generation of buzz and noise and that kind of stuff. And we have in Belgium, I think 80 boutiques approximately. So that makes it's quite a big touch point.
Yeah.
And we are in a lot of unassisted sales, so travel retail, that kind of thing. So that means that your box really needs to be your communication point, and especially if you're doing seasonals, like we are doing them a lot, it really becomes your main communication focus. So that's also and here I am again with the word storytelling, but that's why the as I said, and I really hate it as a buzzword, but the fact that we do think a lot about a story for every seasonal, because that's what the packaging needs to do. Because I need to see it, and it needs to evoke a feeling, and I need to get it immediately. I shouldn't be, there shouldn't be a advertising campaign explaining it to me or whatever. It's really, I see that box, and in that instant, I need to see that packaging and go like, okay, it does something to me, as in I'm emotionally triggered by it, and I mean, this is the kind of thing I want to take and give to someone. So it's an active decision to really, especially on the seasonals, bring the boxes to the packaging to a level where it's really your main communication point, because we don't have anywhere else to communicate anyway, except for windows, for instance, that we do, but that's part of especially for the seasonals, it starts as one concept. It's really, we work on a concept, and that then gets translated to key visual, window, and all of the packaging design. But there is an actual story. It's only a paragraph, but it's what do we focus on in communication, so that you can also align your social media and all of the other, PR channels, so to speak, so that we're all talking about the same thing, as in being warm for holiday. You're inside, there's a candle in the middle of the table, and you get this, oh, we're all together kind of warm feeling. So it is, we did actively choose to turn the packaging into that. And for the main collection, it's a bit, it takes a step back, because the main collection really is about being a general gift, I would say. So something that looks good as a gift and gives you the feeling of, okay, there's a lot of detail in it, and it's really something I would like to give. And on the seasonals, we really push the boxes to the front as communication item.
Yeah. And I think what's really cool about it is the fact that you make sure, because of you invested so much time in the packaging, that if somebody picks it up at an airport or somewhere else, or he gets it at home, he still has the whole story without it being like a story that needs to be told. And I think that's very powerful, versus if you would have focused on like only photography of like the pralines themselves, like as a thing, which is also looking very nice, by the way. But I think those things are harder, like to keep telling that thing. And if that would be the visual language, it would be harder to communicate. And now they can take pictures of their products in packaging, and that is the message. And I think that's very smart. Even on a like logistically communication level, it makes it easier. But it looks easy, but we know behind it there's a lot of thought. But I think
there's a lot of work.
That's the great thing about the whole project, right? It feels natural because it's so well thought out. So I think I mean, what can we say other than bravo and a lot of respect?
We can say thank you then.
Cool. I think that was the gist of it. Maybe just like to spin off this episode, if you guys could talk a little bit about, like, just for you personally, what does 2021 look like? What are your ambitions? What do you look forward to doing more in branding or whatever? Just if you want to share something to close it off, that'd be cool. Maybe Michiel, you first.
2021. I think I would like to continue doing what I do. I mean, sure. I know by now I've been doing this for quite some time already. So I mean, I'm still interested in design, but the core of the actual design is for me no longer the visual part. I'm more of a more interested in the actual working with the client on getting to the core of what you are, and then trying to find ways to translate that in different kind of ways. And And that's what I've been focusing on for the last couple of years, and I would like to continue doing that. And working with a good team of designers then really helps to get that to a point where it's actually, the translation becomes really good. So for now, I would stick to that, I'd say.
Awesome. That sounds like a great ambition.
Yeah.
Cool. Janpieter?
Well, yeah, let's hope 2021 will be a better year than 2020. So I think we are convinced that it will be. We feel that everyone has been a little bit of in a freeze last year, or for a big part of the year. We feel that there is a lot of movement going on everywhere. Everyone is waking up, and all companies and brands are willing to take steps forward. For the studio and for us personally, I think we have a couple of big projects in the pipeline, which we're very excited about, and you will hear more of in the coming months. And we hope that, the work that we've released also last year, including the Effie, is going to also stress the importance or the impact that design can bring to brands, and put it more on the agenda with marketeers.
Yeah.
Branding is often looked at as brand strategy, but if you don't put the same amount of effort in expressing your strategy through design and through really producing what you want to bring across, then your strategy just stays at that ladder. So I hope we can bring this a little bit more upfront on the agenda of marketeers in Belgium today.
No, absolutely. I think those are some really powerful words. Like the execution part, we often talk less about, but I think it's the part that brings it to life. And we can talk all day about Simon Sinek and why and all the cool stuff with brand strategy, but in reality, it all falls flat if this stuff doesn't work. And I think that's what you guys have shown with this case, is that it's the combination of that conceptual abstract thinking, doing the work, and then also like the craftsmanship and all that stuff. So, I mean, amazing work. And thank you guys so much for your time. And I hope to see you around.
Yeah, certainly. Thanks for having us.
Thank you very much.